Hello, and thank you very much for tuning in to Town Meeting TV's coverage of Town Meeting Day 2025. My name is Emily Brewer. I'll be moderating this presentation today. This program is part of a series of candidate forums hosted by Town Meeting TV in advance of the Town Meeting Day election on March 4th. These forums are made possible by Town Meeting TV's generous underwriting partners. You can find all our forums at cctv.org/TMD2025 or on our Town Meeting TV YouTube channel, where auto-generated captions are available. If you're tuning in on YouTube, please click the subscribe button to stay tuned into local democracy this election season. On this afternoon's program, we will be hearing from two Burlington School District staff about their proposed FY26 school budget. And one mistake I made, which I like to do before the forums, is ask, how do you guys pronounce your names? So I'm going to have you guys introduce yourselves this time around.
Sounds good. Thanks for having us on the show tonight, Emily. I'm Tom Flanagan. I'm the superintendent in Burlington Schools, for Burlington Schools.
Thanks. My name is Russ Ellick, and I do our communication and public relations work.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tom and Russ, for being here. For the folks that are tuning in, if you're tuning in live, we welcome your questions. You can call in at 802-862-3966, and we will prioritize that question. I will give the go ahead, and we'll go there.
Great.
But until then, we can get started with the presentation. Thanks for being here.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Great.
All right. So we're looking forward to having the opportunity to talk a little bit about the FY26 school budget that we're presenting to the citizens of Burlington in just a few weeks here. And we're going to talk a little bit about how we got to this point, and in our sort of budget development process, some of the guidance that we received from our school board, and some of the
thinking
implications
that's really behind how we create the budget every year, and the implications you're saying.
And then the implications for the budget and sort of the impact that we think it will have. So we're excited to be able to do that tonight.
Awesome.
And we'll start with school board guidance. We'll just sort of go back and forth here a bit. Our school board has approved the recommendation that I made on behalf of the school district to them, and so that is what is reflected on the ballots that will be on town meeting day. And so the first thing we do when we're developing a budget is we hear from our school board. We have a conversation with them at committee meetings and at full board meetings to ask for their guidance, to hear what they would like us to prioritize as we present and develop our budget. So the first four areas, which you can see on the board here, are guidance and priorities that the school board has given us actually the past couple of years. And there are two new pieces of guidance at the bottom here. And the first is that we need to make sure that our staffing is aligned to our enrollment. So our enrollment has declined for a bit over the past 10 years. And this year it's relatively stable and flat from the previous year. But over the past 5 years, we've developed an equitable budgeting model that intentionally aligns staffing and enrollment. And each year we've made small adjustments to staffing levels based on enrollment at each individual school. And so we want to make sure that we continue to do that, whether enrollment is climbing or declining, and we want to make sure that we're responding to those changes. Mm-hmm. We need to make sure that we're limiting budget growth, and so this budget reflects the intentionality around limiting the budget growth because of the Burlington High School, Burlington Technical Center project that's happening up on Institute Road, which you've probably seen driving up North Ave. We have a big project going there, and our community has really supported us and committed significant support and taxpayer dollars to that project, and we're really grateful for that. And so we're also working to make sure that we're balancing other needs and requests and limiting those as much as possible, because particularly last year was a big year of borrowing that impacted taxpayers for this project that we're working on. The third is to make sure that our funding meets our strategic plan objectives. So we have a strategic plan. We're 3 years into that plan that was co-constructed with our community. That highlights our 5 priorities for our district. And we need to make sure that we continue to resource that plan and ensure that our priorities are aligned to the priorities of the strategic plan, because that's what our community asked us to do. And we're proud of that plan too. So we want to keep working on that. We need to also make sure that, number 4, that we continue to offer rigorous academic programming for all of our students, and making sure that we're continuing to offer a full slate of programming, right, for arts and athletics and languages and arts and music in class and beyond and after school. And so we want to make sure that we continue to provide a robust academic model for our students. And that's really important for a strong and thriving school system. The 2 new ones, those are the 4 that we've had for the past couple of years and that are a part of our budgeting process. The 5th is to make sure that our wage and benefit increases are aligned with where we are with inflation and sort of the fiscal reality. And so making sure that we're both taking care of and being comparable in our salaries and in our benefits with our employees, and that we're treating our employees with respect, and also that we're balancing that with what taxpayers can manage. And that's something as we navigate contracts and this year, that's something that the board wanted us to consider in our budget proposal. And the final is to find ways to reduce the cost per pupil. Again, this guidance came to us at the beginning of the budget process, at which point we thought we were anticipating an increase in the budget. But actually what we're presenting in this budget is will result in a 4% tax decrease. And so we didn't know that going into the budget development process, but that helped us find ways to reduce the cost per pupil. So we took that seriously in the development.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a spoiler alert. I don't think you missed anything. You gave it away, so everybody make sure you don't turn off your TV.
I am curious. So last year, during local elections, a lot of schools found their school budgets being voted down.
Yes.
Can you remind me, was Burlington one of the school budgets that was approved in the first round?
Yes, our budget was approved. 72% of citizens voted in favor of the school budget. That school budget had a proposed tax increase of about 13%. It ended up being about a 10% increase, and that was a significant ask, and that really reflected our big first year of borrowing for the high school. So that was the big tax increase for the 20 years of borrowing that we're going to do for the high school.
Gotcha.
So I think people understood that and realized the challenges across the state around budgets and the need in Burlington to continue to support our education, to make sure it's strong and thriving, and to make sure that we have a great high school for our students to go to.
Absolutely.
Yeah. This year is a different story. Do you want to talk about the audit and fund balance?
Sure. So we just completed our FY24 audit. This is one of the things that we do just to make sure that we are spending our money appropriately and legally, and that taxpayers can really get insight into what we're doing. And so we're pleased. I think this is the 6th or 7th consecutive year where we've been left with a budget surplus of this year it's about $2.5 million, which sounds like a lot if you're just listening at home. Like, that's a lot of money to leave on the table. But when you think about about $100 million budget, sometimes a little bit more, it's only about 2% to 2 to 5%. So this is 2% of the total budget, which is actually a really healthy way to budget, because you don't ever want to run out of money and then you're scrambling and being over budget. So this year we're going to use that money. It's one of the things that we can do to help us come up with that -4 tax rate impact that Tom was talking about.
Yep. And as we head into the budgeting process, again, we get the board's guidance and feedback, and kind of partner with them in the early stages, and then we understand that there are some things that we're going to need to deal with as we head into the budget process. So we call those budgetary assumptions, And those are the things that we know are going to be true in the budgeting process before we even get started and will impact our budget. And so the first is just wages. The majority of the increase is every year for a school district, and for ours too, is in wages and benefits. And so that's something that we anticipate going in, and we kind of have a sense of what that cost may be. Unfortunately, health insurance premiums continue to be really high, and the increase there is 11.9%. So that's something that we just know now that we've moved to statewide bargaining. We're seeing these, and not because of that, I don't think, but we're seeing pretty high health insurance premiums, and there's not a lot we can do about that. So we just know that we're building that into the budget. We have our debt service, which is, again, the high school, and then personnel costs. So that are moving faster than the federal grants we receive. So we have some positions or parts of positions in federal grants, and those federal grant dollars tend to stay flat year over year, or relatively flat, but because of the way that we pay folks, which is the way we should pay folks, they get increased pay every year, right? So wages and benefits increase, the federal funding stays flat, and so we have to figure out a way to make up for that. So that's just something we just know and can predict going into the budget process. And we sort of break this down a little bit more in the next couple of slides.
Yeah, and we should say that the debt service is not only the beautiful high school and technical center that you see rising along Institute Road, but we're also in the middle of a $17 million renovation of Integrated Arts Academy, and $10 million of that is using federal COVID relief funds. So it's costing us, less than half to do that project, as well as we just completed a project to combine our alternative high school programs together down at Rock Point. And we are working to renovate a hangar at the airport for our technical center. So we do have a lot of capital projects going on right now, and we're still able to put forward this budget that's going to take care of taxpayers. Right. So Tom touched on this a little bit around our equitable budgeting model. I think we probably won't spend too much time here so that we can get to the meat of how the budget will impact people. But this is just really important for us to know that we're not, for taxpayers, it's important for us to have taxpayers know that we're not just spending money willy-nilly, that we just don't go up to one school and say, you get this, you get this. We really look at all of the students that you have, and we consider how much money each student needs to thrive and get everything that they need. And we also put equity allocations into schools. So we're really trying to serve schools equally and then give them more money to make some equity and inclusion decisions in their budgeting model. So this is something that we've been doing for the past several years, and we really ramped up when Tom came here about almost 5 years ago now. This is one of his big priorities, was to take our budgeting model to that next level of equity.
And that's in that last slide. That is that RISE allocation at the top of the slide that we talk about, which is an equitable equitable budgeting strategy, where we use the weighted student formula that the state just moved to with Act 127, and we allocate a certain amount of funding for individual schools based on above and beyond their foundational kind of baseline staffing and budget model, so that those schools and their school advisory groups can make decisions about how to best use those funds to support students who've been historically marginalized in our system. And so we're really working intentionally to eliminate disparities and do the best we can for each and every one of our students.
I'll say a pleasant sort of bonus to that is we have school advisory groups that gather now that really help principals think about how to use that money. So we're getting more input from our individual school communities than we have ever before. And so that's been really great to see some parents and some students be able to have some voice in how those funds are spent and what they think is best for their community school.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, I had a fun time with the Burlington High School advisory or student advisory group. They were giving Principal Vestike, our BHS principal, some feedback based on survey information about how they should be utilizing those that equitable budget piece, and it was great to just see students actually sort of deeply engaged and knowledgeable about how to use this set of funding.
Absolutely.
And asking questions like, well, I'm not sure if that decision really impacts the student groups that we said we need to support better. So that was powerful to be able to see that happening at the high school. Great. So we have a couple of notes from the proposal, a couple of kind of specifics from our budget proposal. That
how we
savings.
Yeah, savings, and how we responded to those pressures. That when we knew that we had to keep the impact low, so we had these pressures and these recommendations from the board. So this is really how did we go about trying to do that? Yeah,
how to kind of reduce the cost per pupil, right? So that some of them happened naturally. We are currently have our students who at Integrated Arts Academy at Sarah Holbrook and St. Mark's. They're in the swing spaces this year because we're doing a major renovation. Again, because of the COVID relief funds, we were able to do some major work there. And we are paying rent at those places, and we won't need to pay rent next year. So that's sort of a savings where we didn't have to do a whole lot, but it does help us as we think about sustainable budgeting moving down the line. Continuing again to align our staffing to enrollment. So every year for the past 5 years, we've had a couple positions where there may be 3 classrooms at one grade level and 2 at the next. And as each move up, you don't need as many teachers or as many staff members to support the next group of students. And so we have been able to make slight reductions. And we've done that really slowly and intentionally and not too many in any given year so that we make sure that the employees who we value so much are able to stay in our district, right? And hopefully in the school that they're in, but if not, we've been able to keep folks in our district in other positions where they've been happy and found success. So,
and the reason we're able to do that is because we're a large enough district that every year we have people who naturally retire. Yeah. Sure. And so you say, like, we no longer need a teacher at this grade level, but we have 6 teacher openings and we'd love you to stay. This isn't about you. This is about, we have less students this year. So we've been, I think, over the last 5 years, only a handful of employees have decided that the open positions weren't for them and moved on. It's been great to not have to come in and have some, fear tactics or anything like that, where we're able to just say, we want you here, we're going to figure this out, and we have to take care of taxpayers and make sure we're serving students the best way possible.
I think that's really important and like a really great opportunity as well, because with a lot of these school budget presentations, you hear the biggest kind of way that they reduce the budget so that community members can afford it is unfortunately reducing full-time employees like by significant margins. And it's hard to hear, like, these are people that you've worked with for years that you value. To have to let them go is just, it's hard. And so it's nice that BSD is fortunate enough to be able to move things around in that way and kind of naturally keep people.
Yeah, and we've been disciplined. Like we could have, we stuck to our model, right? So we were able to make a few reductions every year for the past 5 years instead of a bunch of reductions this year or last year because we're in a crisis, right? So that's been part of the great thing about this model.
I'll say one of the great things I think we did as a district too is when COVID hit and the federal government came and they gave school districts across the country lots of money to try to get through that crisis to serve students. And under Superintendent Flanagan's direction, we sat down and said, how do we figure out how to use this? And he said, I want us to be very careful not to add a lot of positions to our district because eventually we'll have to pay for them. Eventually this money will go away. And so he really challenged us every time that the leadership team came and said, oh, we need this position. And not to say that we didn't add any positions, but when we did, we had really disciplined conversations of when this position ends, will we carry it forward or will it sunset? And there's only 2 positions that we ended up carrying forward in that whole process now, and are really essential to our operations actually, which we've learned. So,
and then the third piece here is reducing central office operating budgets. For the past 2 years, we've done small reductions again with the approach of making small moves year over year as opposed to bigger moves in 1 year. And then when we learned that we had some tax decrease showing from the proposal that we were developing as new, the state starts giving us more and better information over time as we're building this, and we learn more as we're building our budget over, like, through this process of the past few months.
Right.
So toward the end, we realized that we actually had some space to add a little bit to be able to provide support for facilities beyond the couple of big projects that we're working on. So we have a school that needs a new boiler, and we don't typically have enough budget in our property services budget to be able to do that. So this allows us to be able to do that regular maintenance work over time.
And without asking for bonding, which we know taxpayers have been very generous.
Yes.
And we're trying to figure out how to be proactive.
Yeah. So big picture, the budget recommendation that we made to the board is that we continue to align staffing to enrollment. We drive funds towards students who need it most with the updated equitable allocation, that RISE allocation, and reducing central office budgets for a second year. We balanced some of those reductions with funds to maintain the buildings, and that results in a 4% tax decrease for our budget proposal. You can see here the breakdown. All this information is on our website too, so people can see it.
Great.
We've had 5 or 6 public discussions with the school board. Those are all online too, and people can really dig in. This just shows the breakdown of what the spending increase went towards, right? So you can see wages and benefits and debt service are the two big ones. Some smaller investments in capital improvements, some just regular inflationary growth, and the reducing external funds, which I mentioned earlier. This goes through how schools have chosen to use some of their equitable budget decisions, how those school advisory groups have recommended that schools use these, and so you can see those, and they go toward really important things like interventionists and special education positions where we give an allocation, but a school may say, yeah, we want that allocation, but we also want to make sure we're able to co-teach in this additional area, and that is more resource intensive, so we're going to add a special educator to help there. Professional development, curriculum, social and emotional supports, mental health counselors, STEM interventionists, some of the things that we're using to improve our programming for students. Overall, this shows the highest level of the tax impact. And again, the long-term, well, we haven't talked about this yet, actually. The total budget is a $10 million decrease from last year, but that's essentially mostly because the ESSER funds have now completely gone away. So we have less of that external funding coming in. Our overall spending per this LTW ADM is long-term weighted average daily membership. So that is the amount that we use to support each individual student.
Okay.
Long term. An average daily membership is like the attendance of each individual student, each individual student's average daily membership over the long term. And that increase goes up 6.7%, again related to the investments that we've made in our people and in our facilities mostly. The actual tax rate, though, ends up being a 4% decrease, and that is really because of Act 127 and our kind of disciplined budgeting. But I haven't talked about Act 127. It's a new 2-year-old statute that was passed that allows for districts that have more students, or it allows for higher weights for students who qualify for free and reduced lunch, students who are multilingual learners, students who are in career technical education, and a couple of other factors. And that was a big change that the legislature made for 2 years ago that we felt last year, but didn't really feel because we were paying for the high school, so taxpayers didn't feel it. But this year, that's leading to this, as well as just being disciplined about aligning staffing to enrollment and not making big investments.
And Act 127 is another reason that the long-term weighted average daily membership for us has increased.
Okay. Yeah.
So we have about average enrollment as we had last year, but we actually have more students who qualify for free and reduced lunch this year. We have more multilingual students this year. And so the state recognizes that it costs more money to educate kids who are in rural districts and qualify for free and reduced lunch. So that's why you see that increase. So those two things come together to give us that 4% tax decrease. I think we'll go quick over this as just a reminder of sort of our education fund spending over the last couple of years, so you can see the increases, but you can also see the property tax impact that we've had. We've really tried hard to keep this low. This is our second proposed budget in the last 4 years with a negative tax rate impact. So offset, though, of course, by that big ask that we had for the high school where it really kicked in last year. So what does this mean for you? That's what everybody watching at home wants to know. That's my little drum roll. So for those who pay based on the amount that their property is worth, their property tax impact, they're going to save about $238 this year on an average home of $370,000, and that's from the last common level of appraisal done by the city of Burlington. And as your property goes up, it is a proportional tax rate impact, so it will continue to be 4% even if your home is worth more. So if you have a $500,000 home, you're saving about $322.
Okay.
Now we know that about 60% of people in Burlington, last I checked, don't pay based on their full value of their homestead, but they pay more. They get a little bit of a break due to their income. I can't remember what exactly the circuit breaker is this year, but I think it's close to $120,000, $130,000. That if you make less than that as a household, you get a little bit of a break. So if you pay based on income, you're actually looking at a 12% tax rate impact. So decrease. Yes, sorry, a negative 12% tax rate, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times we hear people in the community want us to also think about, like, how are you supporting your taxpayers who are on fixed incomes? And this is a great example of that. If you're making, if you have a household that makes $120,000, your tax rate is going to go, you're going to save about $400, and that's good. That's a good savings for you. So we're really happy to be able to do this for taxpayers and for our students. So our last slide is our ballot language.
And this is new ballot language that comes out of Act 127. So there's the new state statute now directs districts to use this exact language. And so we are grateful for the opportunity to come out and talk about it, because the language can be kind of confusing. And we just want to make sure people understand the full story. And also, we're available if anyone wants to come out and talk to us, reach out to us, send us an email, give us a call. Our school board commissioners are out at MPAs. There's an MPA tonight, wards 5 and 6, and they've been doing MPAs. They're also available to talk through this, and love the opportunity to connect with folks to talk about where we are with the budget. And
particularly in the budget language, the thing that is confusing is it does talk about our spending per pupil, which is up 6.74%. So that is true. But we just don't want people to think that is your tax rate impact, right? It is still a negative tax rate impact, and we're doing everything we can to support you. So
I think that's really important to highlight, because sometimes, especially when there are multiple things on the ballot, that there's this huge
You're just going in there quickly.
You're like, what's the numbers? Where's the percent?
Right.
Really important to highlight that.
Yeah. And in the past, we have put the tax rate on the bottom to highlight that for people, but we're not allowed to anymore, so we won't do that. So
Gotcha. Okay.
Wanted to make sure people understand, and if they have questions, they reach out, and we're available and open and grateful for people's support. The past 5 years, 7 years, I don't know, many years we've passed budgets. I've only been here 5 years, so I could speak for when I've been here.
So if you have questions, www.bsdvt.org/budget. So it's very simple. You go to our website, or you just put /budget right in there, and you'll find everything from all of these presentations, as well as the audit, if you want to know what we're spending money on. And our next big project is in the next week, we'll present our line item budget as well. We've done a line item budget for the last 7 years, which our residents have really appreciated us putting that level of transparency out. It's pretty dense, if you have a couple hours to go through it. It's a big budget, but we want to make sure that we're not doing anything in secret. So between the audit and the and the line on a budget every year, we're really trying to show you how we're taking care of your money.
Absolutely. I think it's really important to do things like this where it's more of an overview so you can get the idea, and then if you want to dig in more.
Dig in, please. It's all up there.
So thank you so much. And so contact information is also on that website, or what's the best way to reach you?
You know, superintendent at bsdvt.org is a direct line to the superintendent's office.
Okay.
Any questions about the budget, go right there, and we try to get those answered within 2 days.
Wonderful.
Is our goal.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, Tom and Russ, thank you so much for joining us
Thank you.
this
It was
afternoon.
a pleasure to meet you, Emily.
And I also just want to thank folks for tuning in to Town Meeting TV's ongoing coverage of local candidates, budgets, and ballot items. You can find this and many more forums at cctv.org/TMD2025 or on our Town Meeting TV YouTube channel. Don't forget to cast your ballot on Town Meeting Day on or before March 4th. Then tune in to Town Meeting TV's results recap show that evening. Thank you so much for watching, and have a good night.
Don't forget to vote.